5 minutes ago. The AFU is tearing through the front. The strikes have cut them off. Crimea is cut off from the Russian Federation. Putin cried out that he doesn't need the Peninsula anymore. Donbas is next in line. Our counteroffensive is hitting the dictator right in his Achilles heel. The Kremlin did not expect this. Ukrainian drones are defending the skies of the global elite. The world's trust in Kyiv is the most important thing. This epic moment will end the war. Russia versus Ukraine. Putin did something live on air that is simply beyond belief. Russians have finally seen the true face of dictatorship. Are these death throes or just smoke and mirrors? The catastrophe on enemy territory is entering a phase of total triumph. Ours have prepared something for dessert. It's time for the Kremlin to write farewell letters to its best weapon. The border is turning into a red-hot blade. All this in our episode Hell Point. Urgent, Ukraine surprises Crimea is on the brink of change. Is the passage finally open? A flamethrower raid by the armed forces of Ukraine scorches the enemy. Spectacular footage. It's no longer possible to hide it. Donbas is frozen in anticipation. ATACMS and scalp missiles have wrapped the Russians around their finger. It's the end for Shaheds. The Russians instantly fell silent while our forces threw the Russian army into a desperate cauldron. A super powerful special operation by Ukraine. The occupiers are surrounded by a trap. Will the generals really give in to the soldiers? Green light to escape? More about this later. The Ukrainian armed forces are thwarting the Russians' plans.
Scope 400, level 30-0. Kudamir 45-4. The reduced will turn. I have also prepared the fire. Shot.
Ukrainian defenders delivered a powerful strike on Russian targets in temporarily occupied Crimea. 3 Panzer S-1 anti-aircraft missile and gun systems were targeted at once. And the occupiers' mobile fire group was completely neutralized. In the area of Novozern, a high-speed BK-16 landing craft, which the enemy used for maneuvers and strengthening coastal defense, was put out of action. Additionally, the Kirovsky airfield was struck. 4 control stations for Orion strike reconnaissance drones were destroyed along with their storage site. And that's not all. The mid-strike unit of the Special Operations Forces eliminated 4 enemy radar stations on the peninsula with precise strikes. The 5 N-84A Oberona 14 radar, the Nebo-U radar, and 2 stations in radio-transparent domes in Yevpatoria. At the same time, an element of the enemy's command post was destroyed in the temporarily occupied Zakatovka, Donetsk region. Important targets were also struck in the area of Donetsk airport. The infrastructure for preparing and launching strike drones came under the sights of Ukrainian defenders. Shahed. To accurately destroy the targets, the armed forces of Ukraine used ATACMS missiles with Iskald. As a result, warehouses and UAV preparation points were destroyed, with a large fire and secondary detonations recorded.
They started to economize, trying to save money on resources being allocated, on ammunition, by the way, and so on. And this is important. It shows their current condition, and it demonstrates their capabilities at this moment.
In addition, UAV control points were hit in the Luhansk region in Dibrova, as well as in the Kharkiv region in Krylyakivka. At the same time, enemy artillery positions were disabled in Tavolzhanka, Voskresenka, and Novopalivka. Strikes were carried out on areas where enemy personnel were concentrated: Novohrihorivka and Zalisnishne in Zaporizhzhia region, Turska in Donetsk region, and Sopich in Sami region. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, Ukrainian scouts stopped the enemy's advance. For 3 months in a row, special forces have been holding the defense and not allowing the occupiers to approach their own center. During this time, fighters from the Timur Special Unit have eliminated more than 300 occupiers. Another 39 were taken prisoner.
With precise strikes from drones and artillery, military intelligence operatives are systematically limiting the logistics capabilities of the Muscovites. Due to a lack of supplies, the occupiers are increasingly refusing to carry out assault operations in this direction. The actions of the special forces made it possible to stabilize the defense along lines advantageous for Ukrainian defenders and to secure Zaporizhzhia.
In parallel with the strikes, the defense forces are reclaiming Ukrainian land. In the south of the country, up to 435 square kilometers of territory previously seized by the enemy are now under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. What
did our armed forces do? They are in the south of our country. Over the past month to month and a half, they have carried out a series of important actions, both in terms of defense and in some directions in terms of offense. All actions were aimed exclusively at disrupting the plans of the Russian Federation. We believe that we have successfully brought under control, restored control over about 400 to 435 kilometers.
According to the head of state, Ukrainian defenders this winter held all key defensive directions and achieved significant results on the front line.
Losses over the month, they have more losses than they can replenish, first. And secondly, the last month already this year, February.
So regarding the specific area of territory that they managed to capture and those regions which our brave units have since recaptured and firmly took back under our control, when we look at the overall balance of the front lines, yes, it is clear that we have secured more and we significantly exceed them in every respect.
However, despite colossal losses both deep in the rear and on the front line, the Kremlin's plans remain unchanged. Moscow is not abandoning its ambitions and, as before, is betting on a spring offensive. The main goal of the occupiers is eastern Ukraine.
Their primary objectives are the east of our country, specifically the capture of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Basically, their plans have not changed. There is just a delay because they are incapable to achieve this with the means and forces they currently have, and also due to the actions of our armed forces, our defense forces. In addition, there was also consideration of the southern direction.
And while in Moscow they are frantically drawing new lines of advance on their maps, the reality both at the front and in the rear looks different. The Ukrainian army is not only disrupting the enemy's plans, but is also gradually seizing the initiative. Destroying logistics, knocking out air defense systems, reclaiming territory and holding key positions.
The world has never seen anything like this. It is a true revolution of consciousness. Ukrainian soldiers are now holding a shield over NATO. And not only that, US bases are under the steel control of the armed forces of Ukraine. Zelensky nodded approvingly. Security in the Middle East in exchange for peace in Ukraine. Russia was not prepared for this. The Gulf countries now owe Kyiv, and Putin is about to be checkmated by our side. Could it be that at the end of the game, Kyiv's victory is just moments away? 4 years from help us close the sky over Ukraine to help us Ukrainians. The countries of the Middle East are not coping just like the Americans. Only Ukraine turned out to be capable of countering early on. As a result, official Kyiv was approached for support and Ukraine did not stand aside. Ukrainian specialists are traveling together with countermeasures to the countries of the Persian Gulf.
We understand what is happening, what kind of war is going on there. We discussed some details regarding the strikes on the countries of the Gulf. We expect that we will coordinate our actions. In Europe, we are also coordinating with certain countries to ensure that Europe's interests are protected and that the destabilization around Iran does not lead to increased problems in Europe.
For now, it is only about sending Ukrainians to Jordan to guard American bases. However, it is likely that over time, Ukraine's assistance will be scaled up. Volodymyr Zelensky reported that there are already 11 requests from Iran's neighboring countries, European states, and America for assistance in countering Iranian drones. The goal is noble, but such assistance also carries risks. The main fear: are we not weakening ourselves with such actions? Our own defense capability? And this risk really does exist, but we also cannot abandon the countries of the Middle East. First of all, thanks to these countries, prisoner exchanges are taking place in the Persian Gulf region, and Ukraine will not forget this assistance. And secondly, it's time to stop making statements about deep concern and start helping with real actions. Who, if not Ukrainians, know how important this is?
We fully understand that our war is a fundamentally different and unprecedented type of conflict. And our experience in this struggle is entirely unique and unlike anything seen before. And if we appeal to the fact that we are fighting against a pervasive and destructive global evil, and that other countries should be much more deeply involved in our war, both in terms of immediate assistance and future long-term investments, then of course we must actively demonstrate this commitment through our own actions and resolve. And our global mindset is manifested precisely in such significant things as these.
Altruism is far from the only reason for sending Ukrainian specialists and anti-drone systems. There is also a pragmatic side to the coin. In the future, such assistance could turn into income for Ukraine. The Persian Gulf countries are nations with a lot of money.
They have come to the realization that various Russian military defense systems, for the purpose of fighting off drones, that is, to properly defend the low-altitude airspace, systems like the Pantsir have proven to be significantly less effective than originally expected. And this is an unprecedented opportunity for the Saudis to actually abandon these incredibly expensive Russian systems and instead make significant long-term investments in our domestic production, specifically within our own robust national defense industry. This would be beneficial for them, but for us, this represents a vital form of strategic help for our future.
But thoughts about the future are not so comforting when the threat looms right now. Hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles fly toward Ukraine every day. And while Ukraine has learned to fight against UAVs, countering those same ballistic missiles remains a difficult issue for Ukrainian defense capability. Everything depends on the help of Western allies. And if you look at the statistics on the use of Patriot missiles compared to the Middle East, they are not encouraging at all. According to official data provided by the Office of the President, throughout the entire war, Kyiv has received only 600 missiles for this American air defense system. Whereas in just the first days of the war in Iran, Middle Eastern countries used over 800 Patriot missiles. And perhaps helping to combat drones in the Middle East will help Ukraine receive more missiles for its air defense systems.
The more drones our interceptors shoot down with the help of our expertise and our technologies, the more we can lay claim to a greater number of Patriots.
Official Kyiv also expects that in exchange for Ukraine's assistance, the Middle East will provide diplomatic support in pressuring Russia to agree to a ceasefire. In
the countries of the Middle East, there are levers of influence over the Russian elites. We remember that their families, their real estate, their capital, and their businesses are registered there, they are located there. In particular, for example, in Qatar, in the United Arab Emirates, in other words, Russians are present there. And this was a peaceful and quiet sanctuary for various Russian business interests for the process of laundering money for
the Persian Gulf countries can help put pressure on the Russian Federation not only out of gratitude, but also because they have become unofficial adversaries with Russia. The terrorist country is once again taking up its favorite position. While Ukrainians are going to help defend, Russians are helping to attack. According to the president of Ukraine, there is information that Russians are providing intelligence to Iran to adjust strikes against Americans. In addition, Russian components are being found in Iranian Shaheeds. Isn't that a good reason to put pressure on the Kremlin?
Shock, a crazy address to Russians is blowing up the network. The bunker dweller was set up by his own people. You have to see this. Nothing like this has happened in the entire history of the dictator's rule. Has it really begun? All the masks are coming off. No more fake visits to the front lines or direct lines with the people. A storm of unprecedented scale is brewing. A total knockout for the dictatorship. The Russians have dared. Be the first to know. 8.
March, Putin's traditional greeting.
To all the wonderful women, I sincerely wish you a very happy International Women's Day.
But this seemingly ordinary protocol video stands out sharply from the sterile Kremlin TV production.
Let me just say it one more time, because it is Kershovo, right? I want to make sure I have that correct. Yes, I didn't even cough. I was talking for quite a long time. Can I have a lozenge? No.
Yes, that's the traditional bunker cough. And yes, the Kremlin did not try to hide this. Viewers were shown what is usually carefully cut out, a working take of the video with pauses and comments. Let's agree, the human factor in a video from the Kremlin. That's a very rare thing, especially considering that we're talking about Putin. Even Russian propagandists are genuinely surprised, along with the Z bloggers. As soon as the unedited version of the video appeared online, they started saying this wasn't just an editing mistake but sabotage.
This couldn't have happened. They couldn't have failed to check it before uploading. They just couldn't. In systemic terms, this is a revolt. And if we recall the recent leak about the drop in trust levels, it's hard not to conclude that the revolt, though ruthless, is deliberate. And the person who leaked the draft knows they'll be found out, but isn't afraid. Personally, I'm even afraid to draw any conclusions.
This is being discussed even in Kremlin offices. They say that Putin was attacked by internal enemies and traitors.
Personally, I've said this more than once, including to you. Traitors and internal enemies are trying to strike at Vladimir Vladimirovich to attack him. And this has been happening. Those who leaked the video with the draft recording of the president's congratulatory message online were clearly trying to show that he was ill and in a serious condition, to undermine trust in him among Russians and the entire world.
Once again, the Kremlin and its henchmen consider the publication of the incorrect version of the address a conspiracy against Putin. Well, yes, what could be more dangerous for the country than a president who coughed? Especially since, if Putin even has a slight cough, he immediately hides. But while some Z supporters equate Putin's cough to a state secret, others find something positive in it. They say the president is real. And this brings us to the question, was the unedited video leaked accidentally or on purpose? Putin's address is one of the most tightly controlled television genres in Russia. They are recorded in advance. Several takes are made. They are carefully edited and approved at multiple levels. Given this, the rough version of the greeting is already edited. That's the director's.
This is a strategic vision they are presenting to the public. They are working very hard to demonstrate that Putin is indeed a living, breathing person, and they are attempting to show that he even somehow reacts naturally to various types of specific physiological stimuli in a way that proves his vitality. Well, it's kind of an attempt to humanize Putin ahead of March 8th, in a way. The fundamental concept behind this approach is that they don't cut or digitally edit it, even though they certainly could have, but he is completely willing and prepared to re-record the entire message in order to personally and directly offer his sincere congratulations to the woman.
Just like how supposedly Putin personally visits wounded soldiers in hospitals, or talks with supposed residents of occupied Mariupol.
We've only seen you a few times on TV. That's okay, we need to start getting closer, connecting more.
By the way, both of these cases prove just how serious the Kremlin's system of preparation is for all addresses, speeches, and public appearances. And we're not talking about increased security or even about the bunker dwellers' body doubles. We're talking about the crowd of extras. Yes, Putin's crowd is staged and often recycled. This so-called liberator of Kherson is actually an employee of the Russian Federal Protective Service. Here, he's a soldier, but before that, he was just a factory worker. And there are such characters in every Putin video. Putin's favorite citizens go fishing with him, attend church, have picnics, or simply have tea with the president. And soon we will see even more of these.
These are actually a group of background actors who have been carefully positioned and staged specifically for this scene. Cowards. And of course, these elaborate media productions that are disseminated and presented to the general population are mostly staged with the direct involvement of individuals who are referred to as so-called extras, specifically undercover agents of the Federal Protective Service, or perhaps a very close-knit circle of loyal managers, people who are systematically transported from place to place, just like a traveling gypsy caravan. They sing here, dance there, and so on.
But let's get back to Putin's addresses. If the rough draft of the March 8th greeting was a planned event, then there were real problems with the other video addresses. The Kremlin PR people dropped the ball with the New Year's address. On the eve of 2026, 2 videos were published. In one video, Putin is wearing a red tie, in the other, a black one. And although in Russia they talk about some kind of technical glitch, analysts agree that artificial intelligence was used.
In general, we analyzed Putin's New Year's video addresses from 2023 to 2025 quite thoroughly and noted an interesting trend. Every year, the official Kremlin website publishes the dictator's address, creating his digital avatar. In other words, the official Kremlin actively uses AI and technology to produce the annual addresses. The same background appears behind Putin each time, only the ties on the AI avatars change. Perhaps that's exactly why such a situation became possible, when it's no longer clear which of the avatars is the real one.
The Kremlin regularly releases poorly edited or simply inappropriate montages. After discussions about Putin's trembling hands and strange gestures during the editing of his next address, they simply glued his hands to the table. Not a single movement in 8 minutes. Or here, Putin waves his hand in front of a fake microphone against a backdrop of fake people. This address at the beginning of the full-scale war was recorded on a chroma key. Here, both Putin's fear of real people and poor editing came together. A logical question, how is this possible considering the budgets, the television production, and the number of people involved in creating?
It is precisely the exact type and specific nature of this particular and unique instance that we find ourselves currently discussing in great detail at this very moment. I was wondering if you might be able to provide those specific video files we talked about earlier so that we can move forward with the next phase of the project as planned. And this is such a massive and significant problem, because lies inevitably come to light sooner or later, especially in this modern age of advanced information technology and digital connectivity.
As a result, even the sterile Kremlin theater cannot hide the reality of the bunker walls.